Lev Gleason would get a comic strip syndicate behind him and become the editor of Tip Top Comics #1, with all United Features syndicated comic strips. Under this umbrella, it included Tarzan, Little Abner, Bronco Bill, Captain and the Kids, and other popular strips. Eventually, even Charlie Brown and Snoopy and Peanuts appeared in the series as late as 1951. This title also gave us the first published work of Harvey Kurtzman and Jack Davis, both who would go on to make EC Comics very popular. The series would also end up becoming one of the first comic book trade paperbacks, with bound reprints of a number of issues being up for sale at the 1939 World's Fair. The title would be published by both St. John Publishing and later Dell Publishing, stretching out for a total of 225 issues ending in 1961. One of the very first comic books ever made, Tip Top, was put out by the United Features, which owned the rights to a large number of newspaper comic strips. The first comic book appearance not only of Tarzan, but also of Little Abner, Fritzy Ritz, Ella Cinders, and the Captain and the Kids. Jerry Siegel made a pitch to Tip Top Comics to publish his story about Superman, however the story was rejected. In total, issues 1 to 188 are published by United Features, and many of the earliest issues feature Tarzan cover appearances. E.W. Scripps started his newspaper career in 1885, and by 1909 was including comics and pictures and features as well. His empire grew and delivered content to 400 newspapers in 1920 and up to 700 newspapers in 1930. At that time, it had some 100 features available. United Features Syndicate was formed in the fall of 1931. Fortune magazine said in 1933 that United Feature was one of the big four American syndicates, along with King Features Syndicate, Chicago Tribune Syndicate, and the Bell Syndicate. From 1936 to 1954, United Features published their own line of comic books, using their comic strip features as characters. After ending the line in 1954, most of their comics would be continued by St. John Publications. Tip Top Comics #1, with a cover date of April 1936, features a classic early cover appearances of Lil Abner, Tarzan, Mammy Yoakum, Ella Cinders, the Captain, Hans Katzenjammer, Fritz Katzenjammer, Fritzy Ritz. Lil Abner and Tarzan are in a boxing match, watched by the other characters on the cover. Some of the stories were featured many of the top writers and artists of the day. Edgar Rice Burroughs, born September 1st, 1875, lived until March 19th, 1950, an American writer best known for his creation of the jungle hero Tarzan and the heroic Mars adventurer John Carter, although he produced works in other genres as well. He published 20 different Tarzan books from 1912 to 1938, and 5 different Tarzan strips were the highlight of Tip Top Comics #1, and Tarzan would be featured in almost every issue of this comic series. Paul Berdanier was an American cartoonist, illustrator, etcher, and painter who did art on various features for United Features Syndicate from the 30s throughout the 50s. He succeeded Russ Murphy as the artist of the comic strip How It Began in 1931 and continued until 1939. He added the topper strips Sources in 1933, Of All Things in 1934, and Twice Told Tales in 1937. He was also present in United Features comic books like Tip Top Comics, with features like Sparkman 1943 to 45 and Triple Terror 1943 to 46. He was a teacher at Washington University. Of All Things started in comic book format in Tip Top Comics #1. Harry O'Neill wrote and drew the Bronco Bill newspaper strip from 1928 to 1950. The strip was syndicated by United Features and was also reprinted in comic books like Sparkler and Tip Top Comics. Gus Magger, born 1878, lived to 1956, an American painter, illustrator, and cartoonist. He was the creator of several comic strips, notably Hawkshaw the Detective and Sherlocko the Monk. Bernard Dibble worked at the staff of the United Features Syndicate. He assisted on the comic strips Captain and the Kids and Hawkshaw the Detective in the 20s. He then drew the Captain and the Kids strip from 1932 to 38. In the late 50s, he came up with the Fritzy Ritzy Sunday page. Ernest Paul Ernie Bushmiller Jr., born August 23, 1905, lived to August 15, 1982, an American cartoonist best known for creating the long-running daily comic strip Nancy. Bushmiller took over the Fritzy Ritz comic strip in 1925. Then the character of Fritzy was modeled after Bushmiller's fiancée, Abby Bonnet. The couple married in 1930. Bushmiller introduced Nancy as Fritzy's niece to the strip in 1933. The character proved popular, so she appeared more often, and as Aunt Fritzy was less seen frequently, the strip was eventually retitled Nancy in 1938. The popular strip was translated into various languages. Dudley T. Fisher Jr., born 1890, lived till July 10, 1951. A syndicated newspaper cartoonist best known for his character Myrtle, who was introduced in the Sunday page Right Around Home, distributed by King Feature Syndicate under various titles from 1937 to 1964. Robert Moore Brinkerhoff was born in Ohio in 1880. He created his first and only comic strip, Little Mary Mix-Up, in 1917. The comic about a mischievous little girl evolved as time went by. By wartime, Little Mary had grown up and even joined the fight against the Nazis. Brinkerhoff died in 1958. Hal Foster, born August 16, 1892, lived until July 25, 1982. A Canadian-born, American comic book artist and writer best known as the creator of the comic strip Prince Valiant. His drawing style is noted for a high level of draftsmanship and attention to detail. In 1928, he began one of the earliest adventure comic strips, an adaptation of Burroughs' Tarzan. In 1937, he created the signature strip, The Weekly Prince Valiant, a fantasy adventure set in medieval times. Laverne Harding, born October 10, 1905, lived until September 25, 1984, an American animator. Harding, who worked for the Walter Lantz studio for much of her half-century career in animation, is among the earliest woman animators. Working for the Lantz studio from 1934 until 1960, she was particularly noted for her work on Woody Woodpecker cartoons. She designed the version of the character that was in use from 1950 to 1999. After leaving Lantz, she animated for Hanna-Barbera cartoons such as Yogi Bear, and later she would work on the Pink Panther cartoons. Her art on Cynical Susie began in Tip Top Comics #1. Mo Leff has worked as an artist on the syndicated boxing strips Curly Ko and Joe Palooka. He worked as Al Cap's assistant on Little Abner in the 30s until he went to work for Ham Fisher to Ghost on Joe Palooka in the late 30s. It wasn't until Fisher's death in 1955 when Leff started signing the strip. Mo Leff worked on Joe Palooka until 1959. Mo had done his own Peter Pat Sunday page for United Features from 1934 to 38. He also contributed to the syndicate comic books like Tip Top Comics. Robert L. Dickey was born in 1861. Horses and dogs feature prominently in his newspaper strips Mr. and Mrs. Beans, Buster Beans, and Bucky and His Pals, which appeared in the 30s. He also did dog cartoons for Life magazine from 1914 to 1930. He died in 1944. Edward Kookkies, born February 2nd, 1901, lived until January 13th, 1987, an American editorial cartoonist. He won the 1953 Pulitzer Prize for editorial cartooning for a Korean War cartoon called Aftermath. He also drew a number of comic strips including Alice in Wonderland and its accompanying strip Nurl the Gnome for United Features Syndicate in 1934. J. Carver Pusey was the artist of the pantomime newspaper strip Benny that appeared in papers from 1929 to 1939. He also made strips called Cattails and Ducky. Charles Plum, born November 13, 1899, lived until January 19, 1982, an American cartoonist best known for maintaining a high quality of artwork on the comic strip Ella Cinders over 3 decades. He also drew the topper strip Chris Krusty, which ran above Ella Cinders from 1931 to 1940. Tip Top Comics was the first comic book series in the modern standard size format for United Features, and it was their first ongoing series and one of the most important comic book series debuting in 1936.